All right, if you're watching this video, you're probably interested in learning how to troubleshoot a Thermador Pro burner and oven combo. And this model number is the PRG 366. On Christmas Day, the baking side of the oven decided to stop working. I spent a few hours troubleshooting it and wasn't able to isolate the problem, but I didn't have any parts, so it became a futile effort to get it working. But now I've been able to order some parts, tried some troubleshooting. I'm going to run you through what we did and how to take things apart and how to get to things on this particular model. One of the common problems with these ovens, if they stop working, is the igniter, and I'll show you what the igniter looks like. The igniter is a device that pretty much just has a glowing part of the unit. When you turn the oven on, it glows, and then it turns the gas on and lights it up. And I'll show you what it does here on the broil side, how that works. So if I just go to the broil setting, you can see they get a preheat and the oven on, and then down below you'll see up there in the middle is the igniter, and in a moment you'll start to see it glowing. There it is right there. So it starts to glow, and then as it reaches a certain temperature it will release gas. The gas valve will open and the burner will start, the broiler part will start. And I'll just wait and show you that here in a moment. Okay, there goes the gas. And there it is, it lights up. So this is the broiler part, but the part that didn't work for us was the oven. So the boiler part worked. What doesn't work on this oven and didn't work on Christmas Day was the baking part. So I just say I select 350 degrees on here, and then I go ahead and select convective bake, and of course I get my oven and preheat lights on. But what happens is essentially nothing. The igniter you can't see in this picture, but it doesn't light up and glow, and it doesn't release any gas. Those are the symptoms we're seeing. I will show you down here where the igniter is for the oven part, and it's underneath this plate, the bottom plate here. There's a screw there, a screw back there, another one there, another one there, another one there, and so these will come out and lift off. Once you take those out, you can lift this off and get to the igniter. And then down here you can kind of see a couple of wires right behind that the grill part with a little bit of tie wrap. Those are the igniter wires, and they run all the way back to a connector right in there. And then once you lift this part out, you can get to the igniter. So I did do that, and sure enough, the igniter was not glowing. So that told me I'm down to a few potential symptoms. And so at that point, it was time to troubleshoot. What is the problem? Why is that igniter not going on? So one thing you can find in your Thermador oven is a wiring schematic, which should be located behind the back panel. And I pulled mine out, and on this particular wiring diagram, it shows the various sensors that provide input to the control board. The control board has some relays on it, which you can also, if you're skilled with electrical troubleshooting, can find out whether those are working or not. But essentially what they do, the motherboard or the control board provides power to the igniters, and then the gas valve will open and then provide the heat to either the broiler or the oven. And this schematic, we've got one igniter for the baking part of the oven and a baking valve on the control valve. And likewise for the boiling, we've got an igniter and a boiling valve. So what also is on this is they show you, there are some error codes here. There's no display board on this particular unit, but the lights, the preheat light and the oven light can be interpreted to provide an error code for you. And these lights will blink to try to tell you. I tried the easy solution by replacing the igniter in the oven, and that didn't work. So now it's time to look at the control board and the gas valve to see if they're the problem. And before we do that, we've got to disconnect the electrics and the gas, and then we can do some more troubleshooting. Okay, as I said earlier, make sure that you remove the electrical circuit, unplug the oven, and then down below you'll see the gas valve or the gas connection. But if you don't have a gas valve that you can access to shut off gas, then do not try troubleshooting this. The gas valve for this oven is in one of the cabinets here, so I've shut it off. But make sure you can do that. The other thing I will say is if you're not somewhat familiar with electronic troubleshooting, how to do resistance and check for open circuits and so forth, then maybe get someone involved who knows how to do that, because you can easily do more damage to yourself or to the components by trying to troubleshoot them if you're not careful. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to get access to the other parts of this oven. And this oven's control board sits underneath the drip pan, but there are other units that have digital displays up here where the control board's actually behind this unit. On this particular model, this whole faceplate comes off after you pull off the drip plate if you want to get access to the burner controls itself. That's a little more complicated, so there's no way to get access to this from the front. You can pull off some of these connectors and you'll end up disconnecting some of the screws from the faceplate, but most of it is going to be back here, the most complicated part, if you need to get behind it. But for our troubleshooting, we won't need to do that. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to show you how to pull off and get access to the control board and the other parts of the circuitry. And how that starts is we're going to remove the burner covers, and then there's a T-bit. They have two T-bits. These are brass, so be very careful with that, because they can be stripped if you're not too careful. But these are first held down with two brass screws. Loosen those up. Almost there. And sometimes these can be stuck in there pretty hard, so you may need some solvent in there to help loosen it up if you have trouble putting enough torque on it to loosen it up. And then you'll lift the top part of the burner out, and then the igniter connection for each individual burner is here, and you can just use your hands. And again, this is why it's important to disconnect the electric. Is just disconnect the harness there from the igniter part for the burner, and you can set that aside as well. And then what remains is a hex bit to pull off the lower part of the burner, so I swap this out. And then there's one last bolt screw here that comes out, or bolt I should say, and then you loosen this up, take that out, and then this lifts out like that. And then you just repeat this process for all these burners. So it's pretty simple to do. And once you do that, I'll show you how to remove the drip plate. Okay, so this part of the video here, we've removed all the burners, so all 6 are out. So now we want to try to get the drip plate out. One way to do that is you have to remove some screws here to allow clearance of the drip plate as you pull it out. There's an additional screw back here, which I'll remove here for you. Likewise with that one, and then one in this corner over here, and then back over here, there's the last one. So there's actually 5 screws to be removed to make sure you can get enough clearance. So let's go to work at removing the back 3. I'll take those out. That was like a regular, sheet metal screw. Yep. Okay, those are just sheet metal screws. Okay, so now we're at the point where I can kind of lift the drip pan out. So I've got a couple screwdrivers and well, actually a nail puller, I should say, a screwdriver. And see if we can get a little, there we go, get a little clearance on there. There we go. So now we're at a point where we can lift up the drill. Kind of move it forward slightly to keep clearance in. So it may take a little bit if you're doing it for the first time. There we go. And the wires come right through. We just set this aside like so. And so where we are now is you'll see a heat plate down below. So all these igniter wires, don't worry about those. You can pull those back through. But there's a heat plate down here that keeps the heat in or out from the burners going down or the oven coming up. So this can be removed very easily. And then you're down to looking at what's left in the inside the internals. So the motherboard is sitting below this cover plate here, and that is removed with a couple of other these are straight, looks like straight hex screws here. Yeah. Why it's not working. Have to tighten that up. Okay. Set that aside. So this is just a cover plate from the motherboard, and look at that. So now you can see the motherboard, and the other thing that's on the cover plate of this motherboard, you can take the light off because it's a little harder to read that way. Yeah. So there are actually the error codes for the front panel, and it actually shows you which digit, if the code flashes on the oven or preheating. Preheating is the 1 digit and heating is the 2 digit. So we had a 1 and a 2, which meant the temp sensor and wiring could be defective. So I replaced temp sensor, that did not work. So according to our wiring diagram, we looked at the temp sensor, now we have the logic board, and now we're going to go after, we've already replaced the igniter, we know that works. So now we're going to look at the gas valve. And the gas valve is actually over here. And there's wiring that goes to, you can kind of see it, it's even written down here on the white wire. It says valve BRL for the broiler. And the wiring for the oven would be down here, similar wiring. So essentially this is what activates the opening and closing of the gas valves. And I'm going to take these apart and show you how to troubleshoot the gas valve to see whether that could be your problem. So I'm going to pull off the wires here, top and bottom, and the wires here, top and bottom. Unfortunately, you can't. It's very you can't swap these over. Sometimes, if you wanted to test, you could try swapping wires. But in this case, it's very difficult to do that because the connectors aren't exactly the same. But I was able to do that and show one symptom that I could get at least the bottom glowing by swapping them. But I'll show you a better way to troubleshoot it without even playing with the swapping wires. Stand by. So I'm going to show you how now to troubleshoot the gas valve and removing the 4 wires for the broiler and the oven. Just pretty much just grab these very gently with a needle nose, and they can be just pulled off very gently. And they'll come off. There it goes. So now we have our 2 terminals for the broiler and the oven down here, and then I'm going to get the my multimeter out, and we're just going to try to see whether there's any differences between the two with respect to the gas valve. All right, so now we're going to try to troubleshoot the gas valve and make sure that, or try to isolate where the problem is. And what we've got here is the two terminals for the broil side, and just going to check continuity. So I'm going to put it on the resistance and checking continuity, closed circuit there. And so I'm going to check across the terminals of the broil valve, for the broil valve on the gas valve. And sure enough, I've got continuity over there. And if I do the same thing on the two terminals for the gas, or for the oven, no continuity. So this tells me it's likely the side of the gas valve that's not working, which would energize the igniter and then open the gas valve and then allow the oven to light. So that seems to be it. So I did buy since our Christmas holiday, I did buy a new gas valve, and I can check those two terminals again on the broil side and now the bake side, and sure enough, they both get continuity. So that tells me that our problem is indeed here. So before I replace it, to show you how to replace this, and then we'll check it all out once we put it all back together, I do want to point out the circuitry for the igniters. The two igniters for the gas and the broil, the relays actually exist on the motherboard, and I think I'll just try to point those out here very closely if I can get in there. And you can actually see on the motherboard itself, there's some writing, and right here is actually where the bake relay is. So this is the bake relay right here, and this is the broil relay here. So there's the hot side coming right from the wall circuit into the broiler relay as well. So this is always going to be hot. This is why you have to have it just have power removed. You can troubleshoot it with power applied, but you have to be extremely careful. So I'd recommend, if you don't know what you're doing there, hire someone who's competent at electronic troubleshooting, and they can isolate those. But again, if you have these relays failed here, if they're not working properly, then your igniter will not glow. That means you've got to replace the motherboard. And again, the motherboard, you can find these parts online or at your parts distributor for appliances. And all these connectors come off, and the motherboard essentially releases through some clips in here. So again, not too hard to remove and replace the motherboard if needed. The gas valve part that we purchased was about $75. The temperature probe is, I think, less than $20. And the igniters you can find on Amazon or eBay for about $30 to $50, depending on who the supplier would be. And if you go full retail, then those prices will be higher. But just to show you, the parts here aren't all that expensive to replace. And the motherboard is probably the most expensive, but the gas valve itself pretty inexpensive. So next section, I'll show you how to remove the gas valve, and we'll reassemble that and hopefully complete the video. So now for the removal of the gas valve. There are three connections to this gas valve. One is the main line that's coming from your main gas valve to the oven, and that runs into the gas control valve here. And then there's the output to the broiler, which is here, and then the output to the oven, which is here. And then there are two attaching screws back here that you can see behind here, and we'll do those last. That attach to a plate, those come off last. Essentially, you'll just have to loosen these up. Again, going to the left, the broiler and the oven connection. Now, to get to the main line connection, it's very difficult to get your finger in there, and you can't really remove this without removing additional supply lines for these burners. So I wouldn't recommend trying to remove it here. The best thing to do is go underneath, and I'll try to show you upside down, unfortunately, but there's another fitting and a connection here that can be loosened up. It's a brass fitting, a 5/8 fitting, and you can loosen that up and then just detach the supply line with the gas valve assembly itself, and then pull that forward, and then you can just swap out the gas line on the new controller here, which will make it a lot easier to do. So let's go ahead and start loosening things up, and I'll just try these first. And again, before you do anything, make sure the gas valve is off. And while these are supply lines to the burner and to the oven and the broiler, you may not necessarily smell any gas here, but you may start to smell if you disconnect the main line and it is leaking. So be very careful about that. Make sure your gas line's off. So here, these just go to the left, loosen up. They're actually pretty tight. I just used a little bit of a pre-torque to get those loosened up a bit. And then they just disconnect like this. And of course you have to have electrical connections off as well. And they're down here, white on top, red on bottom. And likewise with the broiler connection, disconnect that and loosen that up. So again, make sure to do these, loosen these connections before you start to loosen up the back and detach the control valve itself. So then I'm going to go underneath here and I'm going to disconnect this here. And what I'll do is just show you right here if I can where this control valve is, or where the main gas line connection is. That's right here. It's a 5/8 fitting. And again, here what we do is we're going to loosen it downwards as a 5/8 connection, and then we put a little torque on there, and away it goes. I think I got it. I can turn it this way slightly. There we go. So this again, if you start to smell gas here, stop what you're doing, reconnect it, and then make sure your gas line's turned off. And again, this is a low pressure, natural gas is a low pressure fitting, so you're not going to get a lot of hissing or noise. You'll get a small leak. So there's the connection there. And you can see that's like a regular compression fitting that goes into this valve. So now all three elements have been disconnected. And then what I'm going to do is go to the back side. And then, I don't think that actually works here. Okay. And show you where these two. So these are just nuts that have a lock washer on them. They're not very tight. They're tight enough to keep it there. Okay, and now we should be able to remove the entire gas valve itself here. And then the next part of the job here will be to swap over this main supply line from the new to the new gas valve, which has that connection right there. So I'll work on that and I'll swap it over, and then we'll be ready for the reinstallation. Okay, so we've installed the new gas valve, and I want to point out a couple things. As I said earlier, we had to disconnect the gas valve back here at the main supply because we just couldn't get to this fitting very easily unless the gas valve was removed. So what I did is I reconnected the wires, and when you torque these back on, it takes a fair amount of torque. Not too much, don't over torque these, but hold this while you torque it, and you get an idea of where you get a lot of resistance is probably where you stop on both of these fittings. Now, what I did when to remove this supply line from the old gas valve and install on this one, I had to put this into a vise. That brass fitting back there, you can see right in here, is fairly tight, and I couldn't hold it in my hand and unscrew it. So I put it in the vise, took a fair amount of torque to get that loosened up, even though it's a brass fitting. And again, it's a compression type fitting, just like you have in your toilet supply lines in most cases. Your torque in here is what forces that compression fitting in. And when I put this back together, I put dishwashing soap all around that fitting on the back side of this, as well as the front side, to make sure we don't see any bubbles. And that will show we get any leaks, but definitely be able to smell it if we get any leaks. But I just put the bubbles in there to make sure I see no, put the dishwashing soap to make sure I don't see any bubbles. So here is the gas supply line. That's the compression fitting that goes in there. So again, we're just going to retorque this, and I'll put a little dishwashing soap on that as well, just to make sure we don't get any leaks. And once we get that torqued up, and then I'll show you how we actually put it together and test it. So now we're ready for the moment of truth. We've reassembled everything, checked for leaks. I've turned the gas back on, the electric's back on. And then what we're going to try to do is see if the oven now works. I'm going to go to convective bake, 350. I'll get the preheat light and the oven light. And then should down there, you might be able to see a glowing, a little bit of a glow if that igniter starts to work. And if it does, then it means we've solved the problem. Let's see if we see a glowing light down there at some point. And there it goes. Okay, yep, I didn't see the glow, but yeah, I can see it now. Yep. So the oven lit up, and the oven is now working and preheating. So I think that was our problem all along. We had the gas valve, bake side of the gas valve was not working. So that solved the problem. So in the final part of the video, I'll show you how to reassemble the parts there and get the drip plate back on, and then we're home free. All right, for a reassembly, okay, we got to go back in reverse order. So we're gonna have to cover up the motherboard with the heat cover that was attached before. And what we do there is line it up, and then we get those two sheet metal screws we had out of there. We'll fix that. Then we're going to attach the heat plate. The heat plate will just go through and lay right on top of the brackets here, and then we'll show you how to install the drip pan. So now we've laid the heat plate in, and just make sure the wires are free and clear. You'll just have to hold those as you lay the heat plate on, so it's always better to have an assistant. So now I have my lovely assistant who's going to lay the drip pan in, and then what you have to do in each of these cases here is feed the igniter wire up through the last hole on that side for each of those. So that's the part that turns is a two-person job. There's that one. Got that one. I'll get this one here. Okay. I can hold. And just lay that back just like that. Yep. Okay, I'm gonna grab that one. Okay. Oops. Well, you can lift it up a bit. So I can pull this up through it. There you go. Got it. Okay. So this is a very tight fit because it goes right around the burner supply lines. So to lay this in, you've got to center it right. And let's see, we're kind of hanging it up here. A little more. Watch your hands. There we go. And then it's flush now. Okay, and then we can reinstall these screws, and then we'll show you how to install the burners. Okay, that's it. And then take the wire, feed that back down in, and then drop the igniter in like that. And then you've got two of the brass screws that go on top again with the different T15 bits, I believe, or T20 bits. And actually, I think it's a T30. It's a T30 bit for these brass screws on each burner. And you go. And lay that on top, and you're good to go. And then just lay the griddles back on, do all the other 5, lay the griddles back on, and plug it in, and reconnect, just turn the gas back on, and you're ready to go. In the video, thank you for watching the video on how to troubleshoot the Thermador PRG366 professional oven. Hopefully you learned something about where the motherboard is and how to troubleshoot the igniter and possibly the gas valve if you need to. Leave comments down below. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.